Hello, and welcome to GDA Live. My name is Gail Davis, and I am your host today. And I am eager for you to get to know our guest, Ben Nemtin. Ben and his three childhood friends started The Buried Life in Victoria, British Columbia in 2006. They made a list of 100 things to do before they died, and for every bucket list item that they accomplished, they helped a stranger cross something off of their bucket list. Since this began in 2006, they have crossed off things like write a #1 New York Times bestseller, make a TV show on MTV, be interviewed by Oprah, helping a father and son reunite after 17 years, and surprising a young girl with a much needed bionic arm. I know that Ben has crossed off 96 of 100 dreams and has helped countless other people achieve their dreams. So I'm excited for you to get to know Ben. Ben, welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Gail. It's really great to be here and to come in live. I'm in Napa, California right now. Obviously, I'm in a hotel room. Yeah. So I'm not in the virtual studio, but I am coming to you virtually live from a hotel room in Napa. I'm very excited to have a quick convo with you and to to share some of my story.
I love that. Yeah, originally Ben and I had talked about me passing the baton and he would do a mini keynote, and then he called and said that he was going to be on the road. So we decided to go with the moderated Q&A. So Ben, why don't we start in the beginning? How did this whole bucket list adventure begin?
Well, it's actually probably not what you might think, because it actually came from, for me, it came from a place of struggle where I was in my first year of university. I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, and life was really great. I was on the national rugby team for the under-19 age group, which was my dream, because in Canada, rugby is a huge sport. It's like, it goes like hockey, rugby. So I was, and I was on the West Coast, which is very big rugby part of the country. And so I made the national rugby team for my age group. I had an academic scholarship to a great university, and everything on paper was really great, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed. And I started thinking about the World Cup, which was going to be where we were going to be competing in our age group. And I started worrying about, what if I miss a field goal? Because I played the fly half, which is like the quarterback and the field goal kicker in one. So there's a lot of pressure on me in that position. And I thought, well, if I miss a field goal, I'm going to blow this opportunity. And of course, these thoughts would come in the dead of night, and I would start to get anxiety in the middle of the night, thinking, I don't want to blow this opportunity. And so this anxiety, I started losing sleep. This constant pressure that I put on myself, it all contributed to me sliding into a depression. And I'd never experienced anything like this before in my life. I was always a happy-go-lucky guy. I had a really supportive, high-energy group of friends and family. And all of a sudden, this anxiety stopped me from going to school, and it stopped me from going to rugby practice. And so I dropped out of school. I got dropped from the national rugby team. And I really was a shut-in in my parents' house. I never experienced anything like this before. Up to this point in my life. And so I was debilitated. And my friends actually came and they pulled me out of the house, and they basically were like, Ben, we're going to go work in a new town for the summer, and we want you to come with us. And only then did I slowly start to come out of some of these feelings. I started talking about what I was going through the first time. I realized that I wasn't alone. Like, my friends had gone through some of these feelings. I got a job, so I started feeling some self-worth and some confidence. And the big thing was, I started meeting young people that were inspiring, that were doing really cool things. They had started their own businesses. They had already traveled around the world. And I never really had met young people like this. And I realized that they gave me energy. And so at that time in my life, I was like, I need to be around people that give me energy versus draw energy from me. And so I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to try and only surround myself with people that inspire me, just like those kids that I met in that new town. And that decision would completely change the rest of my life, because I came back home. I thought through my friends and sort of thought, okay, who's going to be an inspiring person in my life? And one of them was a filmmaker from my neighborhood. He was a kid that was my age, and his name was Johnny. And so I call up Johnny because I had always wanted to make a movie. And I was like, Johnny, you make movies. I want to make a movie. Let's make a movie. And he had actually taken my sister to prom. So I was unsure of whether I should reach out to him, but I did. And we got two other friends and we started talking about making this film. And Johnny happened to be a freshman at university, and he got assigned as homework a poem called The Buried Life. This is a 150-year-old poem written by an old English poet that was articulating the same feeling that we were feeling, which was we had all these things that we'd always wanted to do, but we'd never done them because they were buried. So life gets in the way of these things that you really want to do because you have deadlines for everything else, and you end up pushing these personal passions. And that's how we felt. Like we felt like we had all of these dreams, but we never tried to go after any of them. And we thought it was interesting that a poet 150 years ago was talking about the same feeling. So we thought, okay, we're not the first people to feel like this. If this poem was written 150 years ago, let's borrow this name for our film and we'll call it The Buried Life. And our next task was to figure out how to unbury all of these dreams. And so we posed this question, what do you want to do before you die? Because oddly enough, the thought of death actually made us think about life by really digesting and confronting our mortality. It put things in perspective. And so our bucket list came from that question. You know, our answers to the question, what do you want to do before you die, became our bucket list. And we just pretended we had $10 million in our bank. We pretended we could do anything. There was no rules. The only rule was that it was important to you. And so we created this bucket list and we thought, okay, let's go on a 2-week road trip. Let's go after our list and let's help other people achieve their bucket list items as we go. And it was only supposed to be a 2-week road trip back in 2006. And so we begged, borrow, and steal to get this road trip together. We bought an RV. We built a website with our 100 Dreams and a contact page. We bought a camera on eBay. The community really rallied together to help support us. The local juice company gave us juices for the road. Red Bull gave us Red Bulls. We got granola bars from another company. And we hit the road in 2006 to go after some list items. And the thing that was important to us is that every time we crossed something off our list, we were going to help a stranger cross something off their bucket list. Primarily because we knew we had no shot of achieving any of our dreams if we didn't have help. So we needed help from other people. So it felt like the right thing to do to kind of do a 1-for-1. Even though we had no idea how we're going to help people, we had no idea how we're going to achieve our goals. We're going to try.
You know, today we're not screen sharing, but having just been in your audience, I think it was last October, Ben has these amazing photos of these guys in this RV. They're all wearing cutoff shorts, flip-flops. I mean, the visuals are great. And of course, I love some of the videos as well. So,
yeah, it's definitely, you know, we weren't even sure if we were going to make it home on that road trip. We weren't sure if the RV would, a mechanic told us, I wouldn't suggest that, you know, effectively guaranteeing that this RV is going to make it back because it's so old. Miraculously, it made it back. We lost 5 out of the 6 tires, but we made it back. And what was interesting is after that road trip, people started to hear about this thing that we were doing, and we started to get emails. And people would say, hey, I saw number 8 ride a bull on your list. Like my uncle has a bull ranch, he can get you on a bull. Or I saw number 42 make a toast at a stranger's wedding. My best friend's getting married. I'm the best man. I can get you in. Right? So people would send us emails. They want us to cross everything off our list. And then they started sending us their dreams asking for our help.
Oh, that's awesome.
We started to get inundated with all of these dreams. People say, I've always dreamed of flying a fighter jet or playing Augusta or singing a duet with Michael Bublé. One of my favorites is I've always wanted to ride a horse through a drive-through. And so we came back after this 2-week road trip and we thought, holy, this is really striking a chord. Like we got to keep doing this, right? This was only supposed to be a very short road trip where we make a short film and show it to our friends, but we thought, let's do this again next summer. And let's go for 2 months instead of 2 weeks. And let's go after bigger list items and let's help more people. And so this 2-week road trip ended up lasting 10 years. And these list items that we originally written down that I was completely convinced were impossible, over time, they started to fall off the list. So things like you mentioned, play basketball with Obama, have a beautiful.
Oh my gosh. That has to be my favorite story. I love that one.
It is an epic story. We got about 100 no's. And we
I know.
finally made it happen.
I know. I love that. I know you talk about a bucket list is more than skydiving and traveling. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that's what we think about when we think about a bucket list. We think adventure and travel, and those are important list items. But my definition of a bucket list is anything that's going to bring you joy and happiness in your life. And adventure and travel is one of 10 categories in your life. So you should think about all 10 categories of your life if you want your list to be a full reflection of all your the things that are going to bring you that sense of fulfillment. So adventure travel is one, but you also want to think about what are your professional goals? What are your physical health goals? What are your mental health goals? What are your creative goals? I think creativity is an often overlooked pillar of wellness, right? What are your intellectual goals? What do you want to learn? Relationships. What relationships do you want to invest in? The top 5 regrets of the dying, not many of them have much to do with money, right? One of them is, I wish I would have stayed in touch with old friends. So you want to think about things that are going to fill you up. And that's really what a bucket list is. It's about finding purpose in your personal life. And I also talk about finding purpose in your professional life, but I believe it has to be a harmony. So it's not selfish to pursue these personal passions. It's actually service, because you can't take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself. So you want to be doing things that are going to be energizing you. And when you do the things that you love, then you're more alive. You have more energy. You can deploy that energy in any way that you wish. And the bucket list is just a framework, right? It's a device to remind yourself that these things exist, because the reality is the day-to-day buries them, right?
Yeah.
You're going to continually push these things because there's no deadlines for these personal goals. And there's always other things that pop up that are more important. That's why more than 75% of people on their deathbed, they don't regret the things that they did. They regret the things they didn't do. And this comes from research from a psychologist named Tom Gilovich out of Cornell, who basically found that most people at the end of their life, their biggest regret is not living for them, right? So they live for other people, either what they think other people expect of them or what they expect other people want for them. And so I believe that we don't have to have that regret. It's something that if we're aware that these things are actually going to fuel us to do our job at the highest level, that gives us permission to go after them. And then I can leave people with the steps to actually achieve those goals.
I love that. I know you started off giving us the backstory that, you had the depression.
Mm.
Do you always touch on mental health in all of your keynotes in some way?
Yeah, in some way, shape or form. I just think it's really important these days. I think that a lot of people, I know a lot of people have been struggling through the pandemic. And I think the good thing about the pandemic is it's normalized mental health, the conversation around mental health a little bit. And I believe that's the most important piece, is to destigmatize the conversation. And it's very easy for me to talk about it because I've been talking about it for a long time. And I actually think that it's a strength that I have, and I talk about this in my keynotes, that these things that you think are your weaknesses can actually be your strengths when you embrace them rather than try and hide them. And what I mean by that is, through these struggles that I've been through, I've learned things about myself. I built empathy for other people. I built a suite of habits that I know are good for me, because through trial and error and necessity, I've had to try different things that allow me to navigate any stress. And then I've realized, well, if I just practice these habits consistently, I'm going to be a better version of myself. And so I call that my resilience toolkit, or my mental health toolkit. So that's something I developed over the pandemic, because I think everyone should have their own toolkit of habits that work for you, so that in times of stress, you can use them.
I know when I saw you in New Orleans, you were showing me a journal. Is that a part of the toolkit, and is that now available to other people?
Yeah, so that's something that was another pandemic project. I've always wanted to have a book that reflects the content that I'm speaking about. And the first book, I've evolved a lot of the content. And so if you think about, those 10 categories that I talked about, I think I have it right here, actually. This is good. So this is the bucket list journal. And so this is where your list lives forever. But you write your list in 10 categories. And then you start to understand the barriers that we face with our personal goals. And so, as I mentioned, there's no deadlines, but we have deadlines for everything else. So we want to create accountability. We want to create inspiration by taking action instead of waiting to feel inspired to go after these things. You know, like I bought a guitar at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's just sitting in the corner. I'm waiting to feel inspired to pick it up and learn, right? It's not going to happen. I have to actually pick it up and start to feel inspired by learning, by beginning the process. So you're the architect of your own inspiration by taking action. So it's sort of a momentum thing. And the third is fear, right? Fear is the number one thing that stops us. It's really either the fear of what other people think or the fear of failure. And so you really want to identify, are these real risks, you know, the fears that you have? Are you worried about what other people are thinking about you? And is that a legitimate risk, or is it something that's more fabricated in your head? So you want to really delineate and figure out what that is. So the journal identifies these, and then you start to track your goals and you start to take action. So you build accountability, you build inspiration by taking those steps. You create deadlines, you create rewards, you identify why it's important to you, and you make sure that you have this well-rounded list. And so a lot of times in the keynote, if the journals are on the tables, we'll start that list writing process. So my whole thing is like, I don't want to just leave people energized and with the steps to move towards. I actually want to create that inspiration in the room by taking action. Right. So I'll always have people turn to the person next to them, share something on their list, because when you share your list, you feel accountable to the people you told that. You say, hey, my dream is to, you know, hike Kilimanjaro. I want to learn meditation. You know, well, when you see that person next, they're probably gonna be like, hey, have you taken that meditation training course? And you're gonna say, oh, crap. No, but I will. Right. So you want to share your list. You know, sometimes we do a dream board where people write their list on a board, and that is another way of creating accountability that inspires other people. But every time we do the sharing exercise, I find that people come up to next to me, and they come up to me after the talk and they say, hey, you never believe it. The person next to me, when I shared, they can actually help me, or they've done it. And now we're going to do it together, you know? So you usually get this spirit of collaboration. But the journal is like, you start your list writing process. Then you take the journal back home, you share it with your family, you share it with your team, and you start to build that accountability. So it's been a great tool I haven't even been able to launch it publicly because I've just been, you know, giving it to clients. But it's the bucketlistjournal.co is the website.
I love it. When you speak to an organization, you know, obviously you're addressing individuals, but then what can the leaders of that organization do to incorporate some of these ideas? Because I assume that the end game is it's really creates culture within that organization.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's the knee jerk sometimes is to think, well, if I encourage my team to go after their dreams, they're going to leave. Yeah. And the data just shows that that's not true. You know, when you encourage your team to be the true version of themselves, the full expression of themselves, I think if anything we've learned during COVID, that as leaders, we need to do more for our team, right? And we need to show up for them and understand they're human beings. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the KPIs. It's not just about the professional performance. This is about being the best version of yourself. And how, as a leader, can you support your team to be the best version of themselves? Well, the truth is we all have these personal goals and passions, and whether we share them or talk about them or, you know, celebrate them in the professional setting or don't is really up to the leaders and how they create a space for people to feel like they can do that. Regardless of whether you do that, they're still going to have these things and they're still going to be important to them. So just by asking them about these things, it shows that you care about them as a human. And then it's not as difficult as you might think to help them achieve those things. Oftentimes, it just takes a little bit of accountability. So it just takes checking in on that personal goal and saying, hey, I know you said you wanted to run a marathon. I know that the Boston Marathon is coming up. How's training coming? You know? And then when your leader does that, you think, oh crap, I really I gotta run this marathon. And then that will help drive the team towards those things. And so different clients will do this in different ways, right? So one end of the spectrum is Lululemon. Lululemon has a goal fund where they actually fund their employees' dreams, right? So, but you don't have to actually pay for the dreams. Lincoln Financial, they celebrate personal achievements. So when someone achieves a bucket list items, they share that with the team. The photo, the short description, congratulations, Mike just learned meditation. He just taught his first meditation class to, underprivileged kids. Like, because I remember that was one of the Lulu goals, was a woman wanted to learn meditation to teach kids. And so this is, so you share that internally. And what that does is that reporting and promoting of those personal achievements proves to everyone, wow, they actually really want us to achieve these things. These are celebrated. And so what's that's done is that's created a peer-to-peer facilitation of dreams, right? Where now someone wants to learn Spanish. There's another colleague that knows how to speak Spanish. He's teaching a Spanish course internally. And so that's actually one of my testimonials on my website, is that it's more than a keynote. It's a culture shifting experience if you embrace this idea, because I'll get everyone very excited about pursuing these passions, and I'll give them the tools. We'll start the inspiration, but it's easy for leaders to continue that momentum afterwards. And so whether that's checking on the goals, whether that's celebrating the wins, Autodesk's most popular non-work Slack channel is a bucket list Slack channel where people are posting their wins. They're keeping each other accountable. Deloitte, we have bucket list meetups in the ERGs, so anytime you have a sort of I don't love using this word, but a container for people to check in every once in a while, right? Like whether that's one-on-ones or performance reviews or an ERG or, another like a Slack channel or another internal chat, you can use that to kind of check in on these personal goals. And you'll find that really re-energizes people around, the collective professional goals.
Perfect. When we first started, I forgot to tell people that you can put any question you have for Ben in the chat. And one did just come in, and the question is, what is one of your favorite memories helping someone check off a list on their bucket list, an item on their bucket list?
It's a great question. So I think probably the very first person that we ever helped, and this is back in 2006, we didn't have really any money, but we got an email from a guy named Brent, and he said, before I die, I want to bring pizzas down to the homeless shelter. And so we thought, finally, this is someone we can help, but we can afford some pizzas. So we went and we interviewed Brent, and we found that the reason why he wanted to bring pizzas down to the homeless shelter, because he had lived in that homeless shelter for a long time. Excuse me. And he said, when people came in with food out of the blue, it felt like the best day, because it felt like someone actually cared about him in a world where he felt like not many people cared about him. And so he had got himself out of that homeless shelter by starting his own landscaping business. And this landscaping business relied on his truck, and his truck had recently broken down. But when we asked him, is there anything we can do to help? He would never mention helping him with the truck. He'd always ask about helping bring pizzas to the homeless shelter. So we thought, this is a pretty selfless guy. Like, we got to figure out a way to get this guy a truck. But the problem was we only had $480 between the four of us. This is Canadian currency, so this is even less. So we went to a used car salesman, and we told him, hey, listen, there's this guy in your community that really needs a truck. And he said, the cheapest truck on my lot is $2,100. And we said, well, we have 480. And he sold us the truck for 480, and then he paid for the insurance out of his own pocket. Oh. And we drove the truck up to Brent, and we just tossed him the keys and said, this, we wanted to give you this truck. And he just was so struck that he just hugged me, bear hugged me, and started to cry. And he didn't let go for a very long time. And it was that moment where I think we all were sort of this feeling was something we hadn't experienced before. We hadn't volunteered when we were in high school. We didn't know, we never really gone out of our way to help someone that we didn't know. And it resonated, and we thought, we gotta keep doing this. And that was one of the drivers of continuing to pursue this project, was realizing that these things, when we help someone else, it actually fills you up in a way that doing something for yourself doesn't. So even though, these big ticket list items have really been something that we've moved towards to prove that these things are possible, it's these things, when we've been able to step into someone else's life and help someone else achieve their goal, that's a moment that means so much to them. And that, I'm convinced that I will never forget those. I'll remember those when I die. And so I think that is core to the DNA of the project, and I believe it's important to convey that in the messaging and in the keynotes, and help reinforce either the initiatives that the organization is passionate about, or just let people know, look, this is a category of your life that you need to think about, right? Is giving, and kind of remind people that this is something that is important and will fill you up, even more so sometimes than doing something for yourself.
That's great. That's a great story. In the introduction, it said that you had crossed off 96 of 100 items on your bucket list. And I'm curious if you want to share what you're working on next, or if you want to share what those remaining 4 are.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, because I just, so the biggest is number 100, which is go to space. And I just came from South by Southwest last week, where I was speaking on a panel. I was moderating a panel. I had no business being on this panel, but I was able to get on because I was moderating it. The title was The Democratization of Commercial Space Travel. So here I am speaking of, moderating this panel because it's something on my list, and it's also on a lot of people's lists. And the reason why it's on my list is because I want to experience the overview effect. And the overview effect is the impact that the experience you have when you see Earth from from space, and from what astronauts talk about is you have this affinity towards the Earth, protecting the Earth, realizing that we are all one, uniting. You have this feeling of feeling united, and realizing how really small you are, and you get that perspective. And so the good news is that it's becoming more possible. So there's a company that I'm starting to work with called Worldview, which are taking people to right up to the edge of space in these capsules. And it says 8 people can go, and it's up in there's a big helium balloon that takes you up. So it's definitely finally starting to be possible. And so that's something that I'm moving towards, as well as, finishing the documentary. One of the things is to make a movie. We started Buried Life to make a movie in 2006. That was the goal. I thought, great, we'll be done this in 2 weeks. 50 years later, we're still going. So that I think that Go to Space will be the great finale. Hopefully not the grand finale, but for the film at least. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of pursue that. But I think it also brings up another important point, which is that I've added hundreds of more list items to my list, right? Like your list evolves as you evolve. If it's a reflection of all the things that are going to bring you joy and happiness, well, of course, as you grow, it's going to change. It's going to evolve. So it's a living, breathing document. It's why you want to keep your list in a place that you can come back to, and you can change it. So you want to take stuff off that you don't want to do. You want to add more things to it. You want to look back and say, oh, wow, I used to think that was impossible. Look, I did it, And that's really the goal, is for me to help people prove to themselves that these things are possible, because I'm no different than anyone else. We were just, young and naive enough to try. And when I saw President Obama walk on the White House basketball courts, I had no choice but to believe that anything was possible, because I thought that there was no chance that would ever happen. And so it sort of changed my core belief system about what's possible. And I think that everyone has the ability to do that through, proving. I like this idea that you don't know what's possible until you're doing it. So you can't actually imagine yourself doing this thing until you're in the moment.
Yeah.
And you've proven to yourself. And that's just, that's just the way that we're kind of wired. And so I think, that's why it's great when organizations have big, moonshots. And, when I speak at sales kickoffs, talking about these big goals, is because there's the similarities are they're inherent, right? You're talking about working together. You're talking about creating accountability. You're talking about driving towards a huge goal that will rally everyone together. And so depending on who I speak to, right, that, you look at like sort of this spectrum of pursuing the personal passions and pursuing the professional passions. Well, that that's a sliding scale. So sometimes I'll lean into the professional goals if it's sales kickoff. Sometimes I'll lean into the professional goals if the culture of the company is really inherently, it's built on those foundations. So one of the big things is like understanding, how do leaders feel about this idea, so I can reinforce it from a different perspective, understanding how the company gives back, so I can talk about that, and understanding how the impact that the company makes. And so like one of the, I probably spoke about this when you saw me speak, but this idea of the ripple effect of like, when you are doing your job, how is that impacting real human beings in a positive way? Because that gets buried by the day-to-day and the stress. And so you want to come back to that impact as a way to re-energize yourself around your purpose and your why of why are we here? Why are we working towards this goal? Because it's impacting real human beings, but it's hard to measure that. And sometimes that is an invisible impact that you're not really in touch with. So you want to remind people of that.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you, what are some of your ideal audiences? And I can totally see that tie-in for a sales kickoff and establishing goals. I like that. Is there an ideal time slot? Because a lot of times people will ask us, do you think Ben is better for the opening? We're going to have 2 or 3 speakers, or is he better for the closing? Do you have a preference?
This is your toughest question.
Yeah, and you didn't know that was coming, did you?
So they're both good for different reasons. The opener is really great because you set the tone for the entire conference. People are going to be talking about their list for the rest of the conference, at the cocktail party, at the dinner, and you can fuel that by having a dream board, by having a place for people to stick their dreams or post them, or to write them. You can also, sometimes clients will, so Amex Travel, we had a conference at the end of the conference after people had shared their dreams. They come up on stage, say, hey, we're so inspired by all your dreams. We saw Lisa wants to go to Dublin, or take her mom to Dublin because she was born in Ireland and she's worried that she will be too old to go back in a couple of years. So we partner with, with Delta, we're going to send you to Ireland. Sometimes people will fulfill those dreams. I had a company that I just spoke to where the CEO came up afterward and said, you know what, we want you to share your goal, and we're gonna have a stipend to help you fulfill these things. So, you don't have to do that, but what the point is that people will be excited and energized and be talking about this throughout the conference. If you do it at the closing, then they have something they're leaving on this high note. They get to go back and talk to their family. I say, start a bucket list with your spouse, start it with your family. Start with your team, because those are great ways to create accountability. So that is leaving people energized. And, as you know, people remember sort of the beginning and the end of the program. And so you want to definitely leave people on this high note so that they kind of are driving home or flying home and thinking, wow, that was really impactful. And I think that, people just, I think that perspectives have changed over the pandemic, and people have taken stock of which is these other pieces of their life that are important to them. And so as an event organizer, as leaders, when you show that investment in them, they really now, I think it means a lot more, and so just taking time to give people space to think about these things, which are just often pushed, they're just often overlooked, right? This is just human nature. People will continually push these personal things, and the sad part is that these are the things you regret on your deathbed. This is just the research. This is the number one regret people have at the end of their life, is these things that they didn't do, these things that they believe are their ideal self. That's what they speak about in the research. So when you encourage people and give people a space to do that, they're very grateful. And I think the mental health conversation is also something that every time I speak, I have parents come up to me and say, my son, my daughter just dropped out of school. He's Div 1 athlete, and the pandemic happened, and now he's just totally stuck, won't leave the house, and thank you for sharing and giving those tools. And I'm going to put my kids onto your content or that type of thing. And so, the reality is we're just human beings, and humans have ups and downs, and that's just the human experience. That's okay. And we need to allow people, or give people the tools to kind of allow themselves to work through them, and because that's going to be better for the business, right? Like
That's right.
the mental
Happy people equal happy teams, equal happy customers, happy companies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I know how busy you are and you're in Napa, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. And if there is anybody that's been listening today and something resonated and you'd like to talk to us about bringing Ben in, just reach out. We can make that happen, whether it's in person or virtually. So again, Ben, just thank you so much. And we look forward to working with you very soon.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for joining. And I know how hard all of you work to make these events happen and how difficult the last 2 years have been for you. They're going to virtual, rescheduling. And, that takes a toll on you too. So you need to remember that you can't do your job if you don't take care of yourself. You can't, create these experiences for people if you're not filling up your own cup. So you really need to make sure that you prioritize you so that you can continue to be of service to other people, and you're serving people all day long. So you need to really make sure that you're taking time for you, that you're identifying those things that are important to you so that you can carve out time to do those, and knowing that it's not selfish, right? Some of you feel selfish for taking vacation. Well, we're not taking vacation off work, we're taking vacation off for work, right? So anyways, I really appreciate everything that you do. As someone who never sought out to be a speaker and have found myself in this position, I think it's the best job in the world. So I hopefully we get a chance to work together, not meet sometime on the road. And I think that that's it. Maybe Gail, we can send the mental health toolkit around or put it in the chat, because you can just download that toolkit. That's actually just in my Instagram bio. I think it's the only link in my Instagram bio is the toolkit.
We do a follow-up to everyone that was on today, so we'll include that with our follow-up as well. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ben, and call us the next time you're in Dallas.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again on Monday, April 25th with Cassandra Worthy. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.